On grid tonight, Gabriele Bortoleto took home the Formula 2 championship last Sunday in Abu Dhabi. Is it a good sign for the latter since not the most recent champion moving up to Formula 1? Devlin DeFrancesco is back in IndyCar with RLL. Does he have a lot to prove in his second IndyCar stint? Kevin Magnussen begins his post-Formula 1 life as a BMW factory driver. Is he a good fit with this particular manufacturer? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth. With me are Joshua Birch from JB Motorsports and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. We encourage everyone to comment and chat, ask questions, and support us through Super Chat. And now let me say something kind of weird. Now I'm going to throw it over to you, Matt, for our top story this evening.
Good evening, Kobe. Good evening, Josh. Hello, everyone. As Kobe said, get involved with the show, get your comments in, and we'll get to them as we go. And we'll start with the top story this evening, which is Formula 2. And with our Grid Encore team on a well-deserved off-season break, we're going to recap the 2024 Formula 2 Championship battle and the highlights of the season on the show tonight. Entering the season finale at the weekend in Abu Dhabi, the championship came down to two drivers, Brazilian Gabriele Bortoleto and Frenchman Isack Hadjar. Bortoleto was a McLaren development driver through the season, who ended up signing a multi-year deal to graduate to Formula 1 next year with Sauber, which of course will evolve into Audi Formula 1 in 2026. Hadjar, on the other hand, is the Red Bull Junior driver looking to potentially claim a seat in the Visa Cash App RB next year, although that team name will be changing yet again for 2025. After the Abu Dhabi sprint race, which was won by Paul Aron on the weekend, Bortoleto led the championship by 4.5 points over Hadjar. So it came down to the feature race on Sunday morning before the Grand Prix. Unfortunately for Hadjar, he ran into trouble right at the start when his car would not go anywhere off the grid and it had a stalled engine. That basically ended his championship hopes as Bortoleto became the 2024 F2 champion. In a year where we saw lots of parity across the grid, Bortoleto was consistent throughout the season with plenty of points finishes, 8 podium finishes, 2 feature race wins to his name as well at the Red Bull Ring in Austria and in Baku. Fernando Alonso, whose company represents Bortoleto, said the young Brazilian driver may not have the same car as others in next year's highly touted rookie class, but in Formula 1, but he believes that he's the best driver amongst the group. Graphic on screen courtesy of Formula 2. So, guys, what do we think of Bortoleto's championship winning season? And do you agree with Alonso that Bortoleto is the best in class? Josh, start with you.
Good evening, Matt. Good evening, Kobe. I think Bortoleto has had a fantastic season in Formula 2. He's come in as the Formula 3 champion. He's won them both now as a rookie. And he came in immediately and front row with teammate Kushmini in Bahrain qualifying for the Shakir round. Brilliant start. Won on an opening weekend, which was fantastic. He's had, I think, 3 victories this season in what has been a very competitive year. I've seen a couple of people saying, he's only had a couple of race wins this year. How's that a defining of a champion? He's been consistent. He's been inside the points. He's been making his way with overtakes, left, right, and centre. Brilliant strategies as well. And we had 18 different winners this season in Formula 2 in a 28-round championship. He's one of the few that have been multiple race winners alongside Oliver Bearman, who also gets to step up. So I think Bortoleto is very much a driver who is going to shine. And I know he's going to spend a year with Sauber and then he gets the brand new Audi deal. Now, Audi have come in very much all bells and whistles. We know that the current car isn't great. That's because it hasn't been designed by them. They're coming in for 26 with all muscle, and he's going to be a very, very, very important bullet for that gun to be fired when we get going in, I think it's Bahrain in 2026 as a season opener. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But in terms of next season, I don't see much happening with that car. It'll very much be a parallel of this year. Zhou and Valtteri improved towards the latter half of the season, especially Zhou, who as soon as he knew he wasn't going to be racing in 2025, suddenly he could make it out of Q1 in successive races and had one of his best qualifyings, Vegas and then over as well in Abu Dhabi. But Yeah, the car's not going to be great. It'll be another carbon copy of this year because, of course, the regulations will. It's the final year of this set, so everybody's supposed to close up a little bit. But they were already so far behind their nearest competitor, which was Williams, and Williams are going to have a step up next year as well. They don't care about 25 either, so it's very much a holding year, and I think that's going to be good for him because he's only 2 seasons in to this level of single seater. So I think a year in Formula One to get used to the ropes, just what he needs.
Yeah, for sure. And got a comment here from Adam Limmer saying that Formula 2 is incredible and the racing is sensational. Plenty of time. Totally agree, Adam. Formula 2 is actually one of my favorite racing series to cover here at Grid Network outside of the main racing series that we cover in the grid ranking, plus the sports car racing side of things with IMSA and the World Endurance Championship. I think Formula 2 is a remarkable championship. And really, I'm always excited to see the talent that comes through this particular series because they either end up in Formula 1, Formula E, IndyCar, or sports cars. There's definitely a lot of great talent out there in this class. But getting back to the question you asked, Matt, I think Gabriele Bortoleto definitely had a solid season. Well-deserved championship run, and looking forward to seeing what he can do with his Formula One career long term. And Josh bring up a good point about the Sauber for next year. We know Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu did the best they could in this car this year, but it was just not a good car at all. And you could put the fastest driver in that Sauber, and they probably wouldn't do much better than what we saw from those two drivers. This year you could put Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris in that car, and they would struggle all year long to find something. So I think Bortoleto's rookie season is probably going to be a difficult one. See what him and Nico Hulkenberg can do next year, but maybe they'll surprise us as we saw this past season in Formula One. They just finished up. We saw quite a bit of surprise. I thought Max was going to completely run away with the whole thing until McLaren and others end up catching up. So I guess anything is possible. And I'm also not surprised that Fernando Alonso, who is Bortoleto's representative, would tout his driver. It's obvious he's going to tout his driver and be like, he's the best rookie in next year's class. I think next year's rookie class is going to be spectacular. In the last few years, it seemed like it's gotten kind of dull and stale. With the talent on the grid, it'll be like the same ones have been there. And next year, we're going to see a lot of fresh faces and new faces in new places. And I think that's much needed for Formula One right now. And with all the rookies we have coming in next year, it's going to be really exciting to see how they do. And Bortoleto, I think he's definitely going to be handicapped next year by that Sauber. But who knows? Maybe Fernando Alonso will be right. And out of all the great rookies we have coming in 2025, Bortoleto might end up being the best. But as of right now, I think it's really hard to say. But I probably wouldn't bet that Bortoleto is going to be the best because you have Antonelli, Doohan, Behrman, others could have Hadjar we're going to talk about in just a little bit, but definitely a lot to be excited about, with a few F2 drivers who are moving up to the pinnacle of motorsport in 2025.
You took the words right out of my mouth about Alonso saying what he said about Bortoleto this week. That's typical Fernando, isn't it? For me, he's had a great year, but very similar to what he did in Formula 3 last year. Wasn't setting the world alight, and then comes home with the championship at the end, just nicely consistent all the way through. And we were probably sat here on this show this time last year with no changes to the F1 driver roster going, oh, maybe Formula 2 is a bit broken. And now we're going to get a good crop of rookies coming up to Formula 1 next year, which is great to see. Let's have a look at the man that didn't quite grab the championship at the weekend. That is Isack Hadjar. Had a very strong season despite the stall at the start of the feature race on Sunday morning, costing him a chance to go wheel to wheel with Bortoleto for the championship. He won feature races in Melbourne, Imola, Silverstone and Spa throughout the first half of the season and looked like he might be odds on for the championship at the summer break. 4 wins, double that of Bortoleto through the year. The next thing for Hadjar is to wait and see what happens at Red Bull, of course, with its driver lineup for 2025. Sergio Perez widely expected to be dropped for next year, as Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda hope to become Max Verstappen's teammates in 2025. This would open the door for the Frenchman to race in the pinnacle of motorsports with the Visa Cash App RB team. Guys, has Hadjar done more than enough to prove that he's deserving of an F1 seat? Kobe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think Isack Hadjar has absolutely done more than enough to warrant an F1 drive next season. And like you've been saying, there's a lot going on with Red Bull. We know that Sergio Perez's representatives, Red Bull, they were planning to have a meeting after Abu Dhabi to decide his feature. Maybe his feature has already been decided, but it just hasn't been made public yet. And it would be interesting if that news would come out between now and next Wednesday night, because we'll be able to bring it to you here at Grid Tonight rather than it happening over the Christmas holiday break, and then we have to wait till after the New Year to come back. But yeah, Red Bull is continuing to weigh its options and see what's best. But regardless, if Sergio Perez gets dropped, and they want to move up one of their Visa Cash App RB drivers, that would obviously make it very easy for Isack Hadjar to slide into that spot. I think he's done a remarkable job this year in Formula 2. And if it wasn't for that unfortunate incident at the very start of the feature race where he stalled, I think he really would have given Gabriele Bortoleto a run for his money for this championship. It's unfortunate, that the championship came down to a situation like that, and he wasn't able to, go head to head with Bortoleto on the track there at the end. But I think Red Bull would be making a really good decision to have him drive for Visa Cash App RB in 2025.
Yeah, we've talked about over the weekend how it was a shootout in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix between Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson for who's replacing Sergio Perez. Isack Hadjar very much had to prove himself in the F2 weekend, and he got mecha chromed. Let's be honest. It was absolutely ridiculous what happened to him. To lose it at the line, literally through no fault of his own. The F2 mecha chrome engines are a joke, and they're only in Formula 2 because the big boss of Formula 2, used to work for mecha chrome and has very close ties with them. So that's the only reason they're there, very much so. So I don't like it. I really don't. We need an engine that can run. Here's an idea. Alpine are leaving Formula 1. Renault are leaving Formula 1. Get Renault engines inside these F2 cars and get them sponsoring it. Because we can't keep on. This year has been an absolute embarrassment. The cars just clonk out for no reason. They stall. They don't fire up. And also, if they spin, they choke. And that's it. They're gone. You're out of the race due to a spin. You get taken out by somebody, knocked around. That's it. You're out. No fault of your own. It's ridiculous. It's an absolute joke. So that's for Isack Hadjar to have that happen in a championship-defining moment. There are no excuses. So definitely 110%, Isack Hadjar has proved he deserves an F1 seat. And I think the majority of the F2 field this season has done that, because for once we've seen the talent that they've all got at one time. It feels like a classic GP2 season, like in 2005, 2006, when we had Rosberg, Hamilton, and all that coming through as well. Nakajima at one point. I think it's only logical that they make their step up to F1 next year, and I'm very much ready, because I was very critical the fact that there was no rookies on the grid this season, and I'm so happy that we got some throughout the year. So going to next season with 6, possibly 7, yes, please. That's fantastic news for Formula 1. It needs a breath of fresh air. It needs new blood, and it desperately needs new competition. And we're starting to happen now with Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Hamilton coming back into it. But it's getting good now.
Yeah, and if Hadjar does come up to the top table of Formula 1, maybe we can get a French Grand Prix back on the calendar as well. Adam says one more thing: Sebastian Montoya going to F2. We'll talk. There's been plenty of F2 announcements, and Kobe's got them all, well, pretty much all of them, to tell you about when we get to the news segment later on in the show. One team that wasn't as competitive this year as we've seen in previous seasons was Prema. They had Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Bearman on their books this year, and we know both of them are on their way to Formula 1 next year. Kimi Antonelli replacing Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, and Oliver Bearman, who has, of course, driven in a few Grand Prix this year already. He'll be alongside Esteban Ocon at Haas in 2025. Antonelli won the Silverstone Sprint Race and Hungary Feature Race this year and finished 6th in points, while Bearman finished 12th in the points. He won the Austria Sprint Race, Monza Sprint Race and Qatar Sprint Race. But of course, he missed a lot of races because he was doing Formula 1. Prema finished 5th in the team's championship this year. Was this year's performance from Prema, guys, mostly due to them struggling with this new F2 car, as Josh has kind of documented before, or was it Antonelli and Bearman failing to meet the high expectations?
I definitely don't think it was Antonelli or Bearman failing to live up to expectations. This regulation deeply hurt Prema. They struggled in pre-season testing. They struggled in Bahrain, and they sort of got that together midway through. We saw Bearman and Antonelli taking victories in circuits that suited their car. But I think the biggest surprise was Silverstone. They didn't expect to win there, and Antonelli got a race win. So we've seen the performance of Behrman in Formula One in both 3 races now. So we've had him in, so we've had him in a Ferrari and 2 with Haas, and each time he's been super fast, like right off the back, he's been quick. So definitely he's good. Definitely that's fine. Antonelli, he was supposed to do FP. He did have. Did he do FP1 testing in Mercedes this weekend? No, I don't think he did he?
Oh, he was ill, wasn't he?
He was ill, yeah. He was supposed to, but didn't. And he didn't do his final F2 season. He did do the testing on Tuesday, which I was going to cover, but woke up at 5 a.m., found out there was no blog, no text, nothing. So I thought, I'd a wrap-up show at the end of the day. Nothing. Not one piece of information. Actually, I think I saved the time, so I can tell you where he was, because Antonelli did a day in that car. I can. Russell in the Mercedes did a 123.789 and finished in 3rd position. Antonelli finished 5th on a 123.873. So there was only less than a tenth of a second between them. So really good for Antonelli to step up that quickly into a seat, really. Leclerc topped it though, 123.510. But it was quite quick. It was a good day. And for instance, to give you a sort of example of where everybody else was, Behrman did do a test. I can't see him. Browning was 11th. Hadjar was 15th. Sonoda 17th. Bortoleto 18th. Crawford 20th. Dragovic 21st. Vesti 22nd. Antonio Fulco was 23rd. So they're quick. These guys are quick. And it very much is the showing that the Prema car this year for F2, and quite a lot of the F2 cars, struggled with these new engines. And the only reason we've seen the likes of Mawassa and Luke Browning be fast, and even Joshua Dirtsgen, brilliant example for AIX, a team that were rebranded midway through the season, were absolutely nowhere throughout half the year. Dirtsgen had an engine failure, got a brand new spanking engine from Mechachrome, and all of a sudden he's blitzing everybody and right at the front of the field. It is so unbalanced, Formula 2, with those engines. It is ridiculous. And it's sort of holding everybody back. If everybody had a fresh engine at segments in the season, you would see a vastly different Formula 2. And you would see the true pace of Antonelli, Behrman, Hadjar, Bortoleto. They would be at the front all the time. And I mean, even add in Paulo onto that mix.
Yeah, Josh, totally agree with everything you said. I don't really have much more to add. But yeah, it was definitely a surprise to see Prema, have the struggles that we saw this year, because they're usually the gold standard, of these feeder categories all across motorsports. And we expect to see Prema, up there fighting for the team's championship and for race wins on any given race weekend, especially when you have talents like Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman heading into this season. I thought they were going to be 1-2 in the championship. And when you look at where they finished, 6th and 12th, a lot of people will wonder, why would Formula One teams, want a driver who's finishing 6th and 12th in the championship instead of towards the top of the standings? But like you were saying, with all the issues that we saw, with the engine and the F2 car in general, I guess the results that we've seen this year from Antonelli and Behrman have been highly misleading. So if Prema was in his typical form, we probably would have seen Antonelli and Ollie Behrman, perform a lot better than what we saw. And specifically focusing on Antonelli, I think a lot of people, really expected him to come in, just blow everyone doors off. Well, not doors, but these open wheel cars. But you get what I'm saying. Expect him to come in and dominate the competition as he has done at every single level of his racing career. But I think that this year was, good for him. Character building year where you're not the guy out there who's out there dominating, winning all these races and in control of the championship. Because next year when he goes to F1 with Mercedes, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on him, a lot of pressure on this generational talent, probably the most talented young driver to enter Formula One since a young 16-year-old Max Verstappen moved up to the pinnacle of motorsport. So a lot of people are probably wondering, should Antonelli have gotten a second season in Formula 2 since he is so young and skip Formula 3 altogether, or was it best for him to just go to F1 now with Mercedes? And some people even said maybe he should go to Williams maybe for a year or two. But Toto Wolff says, hey, we probably made a mistake by keeping George Russell at Williams too long, and we probably should have moved up sooner. So I guess they wanted to correct a so-called wrong by moving Antonelli up to the Mercedes senior team just like that, instead of let him, run with a team that's not as quick as Mercedes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, how both of these young drivers do in Formula One next year, and if Prema will bounce back in 2025 with its new driver lineup, which I'll talk about in my segment during our straight news. And also, guys, I wanted to bring up an additional point related to the F2 car. I don't know if you guys saw Marshall Pruitt's article yesterday on Racer.com, but apparently IndyCar team owners have been able to see the renderings of the new 2027 IndyCar that's going to replace the current one. So, yep, there's going to be a new IndyCar in 2027. I don't know if you want to celebrate yet, Josh, but because it was, it wasn't met with all great reviews from the owners, they basically said that it looks almost like a spin image of what we currently have, but the only major difference is that the rear wing of the Indy car is almost a replica of the F2 car. So there's that.
Don't forget, when we last changed the IndyCar, we had other manufacturers with renders, and half of them looks absolutely terrible. So it got okay in the end. On Prema, interesting to see what happens next year with them, because of course they've got their IndyCar program, so we're going to take some focus away from their F2 and F3 stuff. I don't think it will, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. They did start poorly and then got better throughout the season, and I feel like every time we have an F2 change in terms of the car, there is a dominant team that then we don't see much. ART was the classic example. Josh, you mentioned GP2 before, when Rosberg, Hamilton, Hulkenberg all won with ART in the early days of GP2, and then in the next generation they weren't the power team for a little while. It took them a little while to come through. Then Prema came in and won with Leclerc straight off the bat before Russell won with, I think Russell won with ART, didn't he? So if memory serves. So going to be interesting to see what Prema can do in terms of them bouncing back next year. Let's round out the F2 segment with an F2 hots and knots from the year. Our biggest thumbs ups and biggest thumbs down from the season. Kobe, we'll start with you.
Oh, well, I'm gonna start off with the driver that was the biggest surprise to me, and then the biggest disappointment. I guess the biggest surprise to me in Formula 2 this season, although he didn't complete the year, was definitely Franco Colapinto. I didn't expect to see a driver like Colapinto. Like at the time when he was in Formula 2, obviously he ran really well in F3 and in the other categories coming up. I looked at what he did there, and he wasn't like the outright best, but he was pretty consistent, pretty fast. He belongs in this series, but I never got a he's a Formula 1 driver type of prospect. And when Williams announced they were sacking Logan Sargent, replacing with Colapinto, I know the reaction within our team here at Grid Network and all across social media. A lot of people are like, who is this? Because they don't cover Formula 2, so they're like, who is Franco Colapinto? We don't even have any idea who this driver is. And looking at his performances in F2 up to this point, he was running solid, but he didn't really give me the Formula 1 driver type of vibe. So for him to come out of Formula 1 like that and have come out of Formula 2 and then have a red hot start to his Formula 1 career was just absolutely amazing to see what he was able to do in that Williams in such a short time, which I actually landed him on Red Bull shortlist to potentially get in their driver lineup for 2025. But after that red hot start, Colapinto really cooled off big time to end the 2024 season, with some mistakes and some crashes. And then once Red Bull saw that, they were like, maybe we don't want to hire him for next season. So at the end of the season, Colapinto really started to look like the driver that I thought we were going to see when they announced that Logan Sargent was being replaced. Unfortunate for him, because now it doesn't look like he's going to be on the grid in 2025. So we'll see what happens with him. Does he go to sports car racing? Will Williams bring him on as a reserve driver? Will another team bring him on as a reserve driver? I'm sure Colapinto will have some options out there to fill his calendar for 2025 and try to get on the F1 grid full time in 2026. So I thought Franco Colapinto was definitely one of my biggest surprises. He wasn't really flashy. Didn't give off the vibes of that he's going to be this really great driver at the pinnacle of motorsport. And then here he goes, tears it up at the start of his F1 career. Like, wow, I did not expect that. It makes me wonder about some of the other F2 drivers, who are deeper in the standings, like maybe 6th through 10th or even 11th through 15th. Will we see one of those guys, hop in an F1 car and impress? Who really knows these days? Because we've seen time and time again, drivers in F2 will be in the top 5 in the stand. They'll get the F1, then they'll completely flop and, turn into a driver that we did not expect. And biggest disappointment, on the list, I don't want to say Kimi Antonelli at all. I don't, because I did expect a little bit more from him considering what he's done in the other junior category. But as reasons, that Josh and myself talked about with the car, I guess we'll excuse that for now, and we'll see how he gets along at Mercedes. If we'll find out soon enough if Mercedes made the right decision to promote him to Formula One this quickly, or if they should have left him in F2 another year, or even stuck him at Williams before getting that call up. But I'm going to give the biggest disappointment to Ritomo Miyata. Yeah, and we'll talk about him a little bit later in the show, because he's getting another opportunity in Formula 2. I'll let you know what team later on. But honestly, expected a whole lot from this driver, because if you look at his resume, it is super, super impressive. He's basically won all of the major open wheel racing championships, all the way up to Super Formula in Japan. And when you're a driver of that caliber, I won't say I expect him to, be in contention for the F2 championship, but I certainly expected to see a lot better than 19th in the standings, which is, not good at all if you want to be in Formula 2. And I believe he was like one of the worst drivers in the standings who ran every single race throughout this year. So I totally thought Ritomo Miyata would definitely show why he was a Super Formula and a Super GT champion over in Japan. And maybe he just needed this year to get used to this style of racing, and in 2025 maybe he'll turn it on and be this highly touted prospect from Japan that we thought he could be. But it just goes to show you that that racing in Formula 2 is not easy. It's really hard.
Really, really is. And this year, with 18 different winners out of 28 races, it really has been quite competitive. I don't have a driver of the year because there've been so many, as I've just said. I've got a moment of the year, and it's quite role reversed. You mentioned Colapinto and Antonelli. It involves them. The abandoned sprint race at Spa, when we actually did get going for a couple of laps.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. The sheer balls you have to do to go side by side in the pouring, soaking, wet rain at Eau Rouge, up the hill to Radion, on the inside is insane. To do it on the outside is legendary. I will never forget that move. It's a move that I literally was going nuts for in the commentary box. Antonelli, right up against the support pit wall, downhill to Eau Rouge, kept the outside line into Eau Rouge, up the hill, had it, and then got the move complete at the top of the hill, with Colapinto on the inside going, what happened? It was brilliant. And that, I think, is one of the greatest moves I've ever seen of all time. In that one corner. Wet, Eau Rouge, low power car, that I will always remember that move, and I loved it. So that's definitely my moment of the F2 year. Low moment, definitely the start crash in Azerbaijan, in the feature race. That was terrifying. And it kind of leads on to what my overriding is these Mechachrome engines. They are terrible. They will get someone killed. They really will, because they stall by going on them. It's ridiculous. And for the clutches to slip so much, and it goes into anti-stall so easily, it was a miracle that we didn't get somebody killed that day. The violence of that crash on our start line was unbelievable. And it's only a time until somebody will, have a serious injury because of it. And I'm really worried about these engines, because they die mid-straight. And it's really bizarre how they are. They're so unpredictable. So, yeah, that's sort of my highs and my lows. My average moment, I think I'd actually, if you want to go good, bad, ugly, I thought this year was kind of meh, really. We had some great moments, great moments, but it was always an external fact that made them great. Oh, it's way too hot here. It's way too cold. It's wet. It's just starting to rain. This, that, and the other. There's a safety car now. If the racing was left to its own devices, it was pretty boring. And I don't know if that's because of a new car, or the fact that the aerodynamic redesign just hasn't worked, or the engines are rubbish. I don't know. But this year in F2, it didn't work as it was supposed to do. I think that's sort of a surprise, because we're praising the drivers. And I think this year, more than ever, the drivers have had to be more than the car. And in a way, it's benefited Formula 2. So there you go.
Yeah, which perhaps it was in the last formula of the car. It was more of what team you needed to be in, I guess, was the way forward when I talked about ART before. I think my hot of the year is that every team won a race. As you kind of said, Josh, we've had 18 different winners, and every single team won at least one race this year, which has never happened before at this level, which is just fabulous. It just shows the parity amongst teams and drivers. And on top of what you've been saying about the mechanicals and stuff, I think I have to agree with Kobe with Miata. He was the lowest in the championship that ran the whole season, as you mentioned, Kobe. He had Zane Maloney as his teammate for the bulk of the season, apart from last weekend when Zane was in Brazil with FE. And he was going really well at the very beginning of the season, was an early championship leader in those early rounds, Bahrain, Jeddah, Melbourne kind of a portion of the year. And you thought, maybe this is going to be Zane's time. But the roading cars kind of fell away throughout the season. And Miata really didn't show at all. He was way off the back at times and struggling. So let's hope with a year under his belt and a change of team, which we're going to get to next year, will be better for him. But that was pretty average. And for any F2 confident people who've watched F2 for a long time, if you're beaten in the championship by this version of F2's version of Sergio Canamassas, which is Amaury Cordial, you know you've had a pretty torrid year.
Even Cordial won a race.
Even Cordial won a race, so that shows the level or the disappointment of Miata's season. And F2, of course, returns with the season opening for Formula One at Melbourne Albert Park at the beginning of March, with F2 and F3, of course, all on the support bill for the Australian Grand Prix. And we'll talk about it all here on the Grid Network and on Grid Encore once the season gets going. Josh, back to your normal post of host. You can kick us off with part 2 of the show.
Thank you, Matt. You mentioned that, and I suddenly thought, gosh, I'm going to get no sleep, am I, in March? We've got a couple of months to wait until that. I've just started my holiday as well. I get a month off as well. So these don't count. These are wonderful little shows to do. So yesterday, Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing announced that they've signed Devlin DeFrancesco to run full-time next year in the NTT IndyCar Series. DeFrancesco will drive the number 30 Honda, replacing Pietro Fittipaldi. This also confirms that the 2024 Indy Next champion Louis Foster will be in the number 45 Honda, alongside the returning Graham Rahal in the number 15 Honda. This is also a return to IndyCar for Devlin DeFrancesco, who spent last season competing in IMSA's GTD category. He's previously ran 2 full seasons in IndyCar, with Andretti finishing 23rd and 22nd in the standings, respectively. In 2022, DeFrancesco finished lower in the standings than Jimmy Johnson, who mostly struggled during his short IndyCar career. Now, with another chance to compete in the Premier Open Wheel Series in North America, DeFrancesco will have to make the most of this opportunity with RLL. Team co-owner Bobby Rahal said he feels confident they can have some good races together after seeing him competitive at times during his previous IndyCar stint. The photo courtesy of Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. Kobe, starting with you on this one. Do you expect to see Devlin DeFrancesco perform better or worse with RLL compared to his 2 years with Andretti?
I'll be honest, guys. Outside of that incredible start at the Indy Road Course a few years ago, when Devlin made that crazy move on the outside, passing multiple cars to get into lead, I haven't really seen much from him. Where I can say, yes, this guy, has shows that he truly belongs on the IndyCar grid full time. That was probably the one highlight of his IndyCar career. That I have to go hands down, bow to you. That was a spectacular move that I still remember to this day. But overall, it's just been a whole bunch of struggles for Devlin DeFrancesco in his 2 years at Andretti. And to be fair, when Andretti was a 4-car team, that 4 team was always the team that usually seemed to struggle a lot compared to the other 3. So I guess take from that as you will. But interesting move here by RLL. I didn't really see Devlin as a candidate for this car, but the March report from Racer.com reported for the last several weeks that Devlin has emerged as the leading candidate to take this seat. And I was like, yeah, this is an interesting move, because we're going to talk about it in a little bit. It seemed like Yuri Vips have been a candidate. Then you have Linus Lundqvist out there as well looking for a seat, and a lot of other drivers who would love to be on the IndyCar grid full time. But yeah, definitely an interesting choice by going to Devlin. But based on what we saw in his 2 years of racing with Andretti Global, I think Devlin definitely has a lot to prove in IndyCar, and we'll see how his second stint goes for him. We'll have to see how RLL is able to do over the offseason. We know it seemed like actually it does. The ovals are their weakest point so far. Are we going to be talking about them in the last row shootout again? And if so, Devlin might be in some trouble come month of May. But yeah, interesting partnership here. What do you think, Matt?
As Meatloaf once said, Kobe, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say about DeFrancesco being in that, he's absolutely guaranteed almost to be in the frame for that last row shootout at Indy, as Graham Rahal has been over the last couple of years. It's an interesting signing, as you say, didn't light the world on fire at all in his last couple of seasons, and to go back to a GT category in IMSA and then come back up again is a bit of a strange career trajectory. But here he is, and he's got the gig. Good luck to him. I think Rahal as a unit there are going to struggle. We know Graham on his day can be handy, but he hasn't had a great couple of years. Ever since that double that he did at Detroit, he's barely been seen really at the front end of the field since. Of course, Louis Foster, as you mentioned, Josh, coming in as the Indy Next champion. He's going to be having a learning year. They're going to need DeFrancesco to be, constantly running around Graham's pace or just off it and ahead of Foster. If it turns out that Foster gets on board with the IndyCar quickly and is, leading the team or doing better than Graham on a regular basis, why is that going to lead Dev in the future? Obviously, he brings plenty of funding with him as well, which is key to most of this portion of the signing. So as we talked about with Grosjean perhaps not coming back to Juncos or anywhere next year, IndyCar with this hybrid system is becoming very, very expensive for drivers to bring enough funding to get the seats. And we talked about that with Jamie Chadwick last week as well on the show. Looks like her IndyCar dream is pretty much over now. So going to be interesting to see where he lands. But maybe being I suppose he's the second car in this team is probably better than being the fourth car at Andretti where he was a couple of years ago.
Absolutely, and more on team owner Bobby Rahal as well, because during the summer months when it was announced that Christian Lundgaard would depart the team for Aaron McLaren, Rahal preached the importance of loyalty in a Racer.com interview with Marshall Pruitt. Now, when discussing potential replacements for Lundgaard, he said that he had a great deal of loyalty to Juri Vips. Now, after losing his deal as a Red Bull driver, Vips has spent the last couple of years as a simulator and reserve driver at RLL. While Rahal entered an extra car for Vips in 3 IndyCar races in the last 2 seasons, it ultimately didn't materialize into a full-time stint. The link to this Racer.com article is in the video description below. Matt, if you were Juri Vips, would you stay on as the team's simulator and reserve driver for 2025? If offered, or would you move on altogether after being passed over for Devlin DeFrancesco?
So many jokes, so little time. We're talking about F2 at the top of the show. Vips was a standout in F2 at times. He was. You look at him and go, God, he's going places in a hurry. It didn't quite happen for him, and all the things that happened off track as well. Then he got the IndyCar driving up. Maybe this is the new pathway for him. He's got to be in the conversation, hasn't he? I guess if any of those guys in the top team have to miss a race through illness or injury, and he gets a chance to get in the car and have a go and impresses, then that will perhaps open doors for him for 26. So I guess that's where he's got to be in the window to get a drive. If you're again going off to do something like IMSA or Trans Am or something, I don't know, whatever, just to keep your eye in. Maybe we talked about it with Formula 1 a lot, haven't we? Once you're out of the bubble, it's very, very difficult to come back in unless you're Nico Hülkenberg or Fernando Alonso, really, over the last handful of years. So I think he's in the best spot he can probably be, again, with what backing he may be bringing to the table. So I think he's, kind of the first ready and willing substitute there for RLL if they do need to bring him in.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to what Juri Vips wants to do. I mean, it has to be frustrating for him, obviously, because since he exited Formula 2 and tried to find something else with his racing career, it really seems like he's zeroed in and trying to get on the IndyCar grid full time. But as it's been saying, for various reasons, is getting even harder and harder, to get a seat in IndyCar. And although Yuri Vips, is obviously not going to be bringing the level of funding that a Devlin DeFrancesco is going to bring, it'd be interesting to see what he would do if he ended up getting a full-time seat in IndyCar. And I thought it was really funny, Bobby Rahal talking about, how he has a great deal of loyalty to Yuri Vips, and then you end up not giving Yuri Vips a seat. But at the end of the day, we know money talks, and this is a business first. So Bobby Rahal had to make a business decision, and that obviously did not include Yuri Vips. If Yuri's not bitter with the team, for not giving him Pietro Fittipaldi's seat for 2025, and if they still have the role, maybe he decides to stay on. And like you're saying, Matt, this is IndyCar racing. Anything can happen. You have the Indianapolis Motor Speedway where you're going 230 miles per hour. And you hate to say it, but there's a high possibility, that someone could get injured. Whether it's in practice and qualifying in the race itself. So or in any of the other oval races, if an IndyCar driver at Rahal gets injured, Yuri Vips would be a standing there. And if he does extremely well, maybe he'll be rewarded down the road. Maybe not by Rahal, but maybe another team will snap him up. Or if a different team is offering a reserve role and Yuri wants to change the scenery in IndyCar, we don't really see a lot, of official reserve drivers in the IndyCar series like we see in Formula E and Formula One. But maybe that could be an option as well. I remember when Yuri was, with RLL, Bobby Rahal brought him to Road Atlanta for the IMSA season finale at Petit Le Mans, and he introduced him to some of the people in the LMP2 paddock. So maybe sports cars could be somewhere Yuri could land, but he's definitely way too talented of a driver, to just be sitting on the sidelines, not racing anything at all at some point. I imagine that, he's just going to get frustrated and he's going to try to, be back out there actually in a car, because the longer you sit out not racing, that's not really good for a race car driver at all.
Stimulating. I never knew that would come up as well when you're trying to say a simulator driver as well. They did it again. Somebody write that down, because it proves to you all that this is a live show. Anything can happen. And it's not like that something, the Always Goes Wrong show that's been on BBC for a while. They are fantastic. If you need laughing, watch that. Or just listen to one of our shows. It all works the same. So, on to our third story of the evening. BMW has signed outgoing Formula One driver Kevin Magnussen to its factory driver lineup. Now, while his exact program hasn't been announced yet, he's expected to compete in the FIA Formula E World in the FIA World Endurance Championship with Team WRT, seemingly leaving Formula One behind for good this time. Magnussen is no stranger to sports car racing. During his year away from the pinnacle of motorsport in 2021, he raced in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship with Chip Ganassi Racing in a Cadillac DPI. Magnussen said after a decade in Formula One, he's embarking on a new exciting chapter in his racing career, and he's proud to represent an iconic brand, graphic courtesy of BMW. I'm all tongue-tied tonight, guys, as well. But Kobe, is Magnussen a good fit with BMW?
I'll admit, I was a little surprised when BMW announced him as a factory driver. That's probably one of the manufacturers I didn't expect him to go to after Formula One. But I say good for Kevin Magnussen. He had a great run, in Formula One for the last decade. Did the best that he could. Ran with multiple teams, 2 different stints at Haas, made a whole career out of it. And now he can, go off into the Formula One sunset and finally have fun, racing again, rather, than just trying to do the best you can in the Haas and finishing the points and all of that. Yeah, but like you're saying, no stranger to sports car racing. I remember when he ran in IMSA that one year with Chip Ganassi Racing's Cadillac DPI program. Remember when he ended up winning, one of the races? I believe it was on the streets of Detroit. Like,
yep.
I've never seen Kevin Magnussen smile that much. Like, he was truly enjoying himself, because, in Formula One, you're in a car that's not going to win, so you don't expect to win. And it'd been so long since he'd actually won an actual race. So the feeling of winning again, it's like, wow, I've totally forgot what this feels like. This feels good. I want more of this. And now, Magnussen's going to have another opportunity, to go out there and win, where you wake up on race morning in Formula One and you already know for a fact, I'm not going to win this race. And given how they do the balance of performance nowadays in sports car racing, he can now wake up on race day, handful of times per year and say, I believe we have a shot that we can go out there and win. We can stand on the top step of the podium, where we can just get a podium finish in general. Looking forward to seeing how he gets along with BMW. I think it'll be an interesting partnership to follow. But I did read an interview, Sports Car 365 that Magnussen did, and although Josh, like you're saying, we don't know his official program, it really seems like he's going to be in the World Endurance Championship, so where he can keep his family in Europe and all of that. And he also said that he's more than likely going to be running the Rolex 24 at Daytona next month as well. So he'll be with the Rahal Letterman Lanigan team if that ends up being the case. And honestly, if I thought Magnussen was going to be joining sports car racing again, I thought he would potentially be with Cadillac. But as we already know, Cadillac set their driver lineup quite a while ago in IMSA and the World Endurance Championship with Jota Sport. So I guess there wasn't enough room there, given Kevin's previous relationship with Cadillac. And interesting enough, there's a Cadillac Formula One program coming along, and since Cadillac is looking for experienced Formula One drivers, I guess one would wonder, would Kevin Magnussen be on their short list? But it really seems like Kevin is truly done with Formula One this time. But I wonder what he'd do if Cadillac F1 comes knocking on the door.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see him placed in a Cadillac team in IMSA, or even just as an endurance driver in IMSA. Perhaps if that was, in the long-term thinking. Theme of the show, isn't it, really, a little bit tonight, of people that were really good in the junior categories, and then they got to Formula One and were like, oh, didn't quite happen for K-Mag. Got a podium with McLaren on his debut, from memory, at Melbourne in his first season, and then we know how bad that McLaren was. But as you said, guys, he did well in that season in IMSA, was teamed with Renger van der Zande in that season, and they got that win at Detroit. I would expect, because I believe we're going to get the BMW end of season celebration and whatnot, I believe is at the weekend. So we may then they normally announce the pairings and driver lineups and whatnot for that at that event. So we may get more K-Mag news of where he's going to be for 2025 coming this weekend at BMW's end of season party. So I'm excited to see what he can do. We know, he was good in IMSA, and he's one of those guys that will just get in and go as fast as he can, whatever he's in. So excited to see how he does, and if he does go to IMSA more than WEC next year. BMW had a decent run at the end of the season, didn't they, in IMSA? They won at Indianapolis at the penultimate race. So the car has been getting better and better throughout the year in both IMSA and WEC. So a bit of a freshen up of the driver lineups in both, and that's been happening in their GT program as well, BMW this week. Might put Magnussen perhaps into a more often than not race-winning car for 2025.
Absolutely, as well. And it's a shame, isn't it, Matt, that we don't have him as a motorcycle rider, because BMW look like they're coming into MotoGP in about 2027, 2028. We know that Top Rack's probably going to be going for it, but Kevin Magnussen would be fearsome as well. He's quite a good biker as well. Okay, well, we're going to hand over to Matt right now for the latest anyway from our Grid EPI update.
Thank you, Josh. And it was a busy weekend for the Grid Endurance Performance Index, the penultimate weekend of the season. We'll start in Suzuka in Japan, where the final of the Super GT Championship was held at the weekend. And congratulations to Shota Sobe and Kenta Yamashita winning the race, their third win of the season, and with it taking home the championship, and Shota Sobe winning the Super Formula Championship a couple of weeks ago as well. So he has had an absolutely stellar year in Japan, winning both of their top line championships with a roof over his head and without. In the GT300 category, Takashi Kagure and Yuya Motojima won the race, also winning the championship for the J-Lock Lamborghini team. The Formula E Championship kicked off at the weekend, but that wasn't the only one that started its season, because the Asian Le Mans Series kicked off at the weekend at Sepang with 2 4-hour races, although the second one was cut short by rain. On Saturday, the first race of the weekend, Fred Paudad, Tristan Vautier and James Allen getting the victory overall and in the Prototype 2 category. In P3, Stefan Lemaire, Matteo Quintarelli, son of Ronnie, and Bence Valiant winning in P3. And in GT, Esteban Masson, Daniel Serra and Yude Yoshida got the victory. In the Sunday race, which, as I say, was cut short by weather, Michael Jensen, Malfi Jakobsen and Valerio Rinicella got the win overall and in P2. Same winners in P3 as in the Saturday race, Lemaire, Quintarelli and Valiant. And in the GT category, Joel Gunon, Gabriele Piana and Rinat Salikov were the winners. One more race to go in the Grid Endurance Performance Index of 2024, and it's this weekend at Abu Dhabi, where the Golf 12 Hours powered by Lenovo is underway at the weekend. It's a Saturday race. It's 8 hours, then there's a 2-hour stop, and then there's 4 more hours to finish the race. So it's a bit of a strange schedule, but that is the race we're looking at for this weekend. We'll bring you the results of that and the point score of the whole season on the show next week with some extra bit of stats and facts from the EPI Championship thrown in for good measure. Here's how the points look now with one more week to go. And as you'll see, Shota Tsube and Kenta Yamashita have moved up with their win at the weekend in that Super GT race at Suzuka. So they've jumped up to joint 5th in the points. Otherwise, the rest of the top 10 stay the same with a little bit of shuffling with those two guys coming up the standings. Not too much change throughout the rest of the top 50. And we'll bring you the final standings of the Grid Endurance Performance Index on the show next week after the Golf 12 Hours at Yas Marina. Time to hand over to Kobe now. Plenty more news headlines from the week.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more motorsports news from around the world. AO Racing confirmed its GTD Pro driver lineup for the 2025 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season. 2024 GTD Pro champion Lauren Heinrich will return to the number 77 Rexy Porsche after having multiple teammates sharing the car with him in the second half of the 2024 season. Heinrich will have more consistency next year as Klaus Bachler will be his co-driver for the full season. Alessio Picariello will complete the lineup for the Michelin Endurance Cup races. Heinrich said he's happy to be back in the Rexy Porsche and hopes to accomplish his goals of winning the Crown Jewel Endurance races at Daytona, Sebring, and Road Atlanta. Graphic courtesy of AO Racing. Colic Racing announced changes to its competition leadership ahead of the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. Mike Cook comes over from Stewart Haas Racing to serve as Colic's technical director. Cook previously worked as a lead engineer for Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola, and Chase Briscoe. Andrew Dickinson from Australia will be Ty Dillon's crew chief, who will lead the number 10 team after working at Richard Childress Racing as an engineer. Meanwhile, Trent Owens will be AJ Allmendinger's crew chief and lead the number 16 team. Team president Chris Rice said that this is the most impressive competition and leadership group they've ever had and believes smart people with fresh eyes will help improve their on-track performance. Graphic courtesy of Colic Racing. The 2025 ARCA Menard Series East and West schedules were released recently. ARCA East will run an 8-race schedule with the first 4 races at Five Flag Speedway, Rockingham, Nashville Fairgrounds, and Flat Rock taking place as standalones. The final 4 races at Dover, IRP, Iowa, and Bristol will run as a combination race with ARCA National. ARCA West will run 12 races, and only the Phoenix Spring race will run as a combination event with ARCA National. Another notable on the ARCA West schedule is the return of Tucson Speedway for the first time since 2019, and Colorado National Speedway is back for the first time since 2021. Graphic courtesy of the ARCA Menard Series. Last Sunday, the 57th run of the Snowball Derby took place at Five Flag Speedway in Pensacola, Florida. 2-time Snowball Derby race winner and 2024 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series champion Ty Majeski won the pole for the 300-lap super late model race. Majeski dominated the race and seemed destined to win the Crown Jewel short track event for the 3rd time, but his car faded during the last half of the race. That's when Caden Honeycutt emerged as the favorite, took the lead, and held off a hard-charging Stephen Nasse to win the 57th Snowball Derby. This was a huge win for Honeycutt before running for the Truck Series title in 2025. Photo courtesy of Nice Motorsports. Roland Dane is stepping down from his role as non-executive chairman of Triple Eight Race Engineering at the end of the year. This will officially see the Dane's family involvement with one of the most successful teams in the history of motorsports in Australia come to an end. Earlier this year, Roland's daughter, Jessica Dane, sold her 30% stake in the team's ownership group to Earl Evans and Steve Blackmore. In an open letter, Roland Dane said he felt like it was time for him to move on from this chapter in his life and believes that he's leaving the team in great hands. Rex Devantier will replace Dane as non-executive chairman of Triple Eight. Photo courtesy of Supercars. Richard Childress Racing announced its crew chief lineup for the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. Andy Street, who previously served as crew chief for Austin Hill, received the promotion to the Cup Series. When RCR enters a 3rd car in the Cup Series, Street will be the crew chief leading that team, which will run multiple races with multiple drivers. Chad Haney will replace Street as Hill's crew chief, while Danny Stockman will continue to work with Jesse Love. Graphic courtesy of Richard Childress Racing. And as we've already alluded to, full disclaimer, we'll have some Formula 2 silly season stories to share. And since there are so many of them, we've only decided to include a few, but starting with High Tech Grand Prix, they've signed Dina Bogdanovic to run full-time in F2 next year. The 20-year-old member of the Scuderia Ferrari Driver Academy moves up to the next level after finishing sixth in the Formula 3 Championship in his 2 seasons there. Bogdanovic had the opportunity to make his F2 debut early by running the final 2 rounds of 2024 in Qatar and Abu Dhabi. He'll be teammates with Luke Brown in 2025. Graphic courtesy of High Tech Grand Prix. After finishing 19th this year with Roden Motorsport, Ritomo Miyata is switching to ART Grand Prix for the 2025 Formula 2 season. While his rookie season in F2 was very challenging, there's still some hope that Miyata can grow because of his impressive racing resume back in Japan. As I talked about earlier, the Toyota Gazoo racing back driver has won championships in the F4 Japanese Championship, Super Formula Lights, Super Formula, and Super GT. Miyata said he's grateful for Toyota giving him another opportunity to race in F2 and promised to give his best to his new team based on lessons he learned from the 2024 season. Graphic courtesy of ART Grand Prix. Prima announced its 2025 Formula 2 driver lineup, starting with 2024 Formula 3 Championship runner Gabriele Bortoleto. He was also with Prima in F3, and the highlight of their season was winning the Monaco feature race. The Alpine Academy driver made his F2 debut early and got a podium in his very first race back in Baku. Many said he's very happy to continue working with Prima as he steps up to F2 full-time in 2025. And his teammate will be Sebastian Montoya, the son of motorsports great Juan Pablo Montoya. Sebastian ran 2 full seasons in F3, finishing 16th and 17th in the standings both years. While F3 was a bit of a struggle for him, Montoya will get a chance to show what he can do in F2. The team said they're excited to work with him again at the previous ventures together in Formula 3 and Formula Regional. Photos courtesy of Prima. Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports confirmed its GTD Pro driver lineup for the 2025 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season. Mostly an unchanged driver lineup, with Antonio Garcia and Alexander Sims returning to the number 3 Corvette for a full season. Danny Huncadella will be back for the Michelin Endurance Cup events, while Tommy Milner and Nicky Katzberg return to the number 4 Corvette for the full year, with Earl Bamber moving up to the GTP Class Action Express Racing, and Nico Veroni will replace him as the number 4 team's endurance driver. And the team also announced the full driver lineup for its LMP2 program. Pietro Fittipaldi will run full-time with co-driver Chris Cummins after losing his full-time IndyCar seat at Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. And the next regular James Rowe will compete in the Michelin Endurance Cup races, while IndyCar driver Callum Ilott completes the lineup for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Graphics courtesy of Pratt Miller Motorsports. Meyer Shank Racing confirmed that Kakuna Shinota will complete its driver lineup in the number 93 Acura for the Rolex 24 at Daytona, joining Ringer Van der Zande, Nick Yellerly, and Alex Palou for the twice around the clock Florida Endurance Classic. The Super Formula regular tested with Meyer Shank last month at Daytona and impressed the team. He'll also run 2 additional Michelin Endurance Cup races at Watkins Glen and Indianapolis. And Ota also gave up his Super GT seat because there were just way too many clashes to make these additional races work with his season back in Super GT. So in order to add 3 IMSA Enduros, he ended up just saying, I'm not going to race in Super Formula in 2025. And Ota said he was very happy that Acura gave him the green light to move forward with this program and looks forward to competing in IMSA's GTP class with the world's top drivers. Photo courtesy of Meyer Shank Racing. The Harder Racing team announced they're fielding 2 cars for next month's Rolex 24 at Daytona, driving the number 007 Aston Martin in the GTD Pro class. We'll see all of their heavy hitters in the car: Ross Gunn, Alex Riberos, Roman DeAngelis, and Marco Sorensen. Then the number 27 Aston Martin is going to compete in GTD with Zachary Robichon, Tom Gamble, Mattia Drudy, and Casper Stevenson behind the wheel. However, we won't see the team's new Valkyrie hypercar at Daytona, but expect to see that later in the 2025 IMSA season. Team principal Ian James said they're formed 2 strong lineups, but he feels a bit bittersweet about it since it'll be his first Rolex 24 he's not competing in as a driver. Photo courtesy of the Harder Racing team. After losing his seat at Porsche Penske Motorsport, Dan Cameron has found a new home in the LMP2 class. Cameron will join AO Racing in the IMSA's WeatherTech Sports Car Championship LMP2, and he's going to share the number 99 Spike the Dragon prototype with PJ Hyatt for the full season. Johnny Edgar will run the Michelin Endurance Cup races. Then IndyCar driver Christian Rasmussen will complete the lineup for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Cameron said the team is creating something really special with Spike and Rexy by making new sports car racing fans everywhere and thinks LMP2 looks extremely competitive for next year, so Dan Cameron has a new home in a new class in IMSA. Graphic courtesy of AO Racing. With that said, going to turn it over to Matt for our Hots and Knots segment.
Thank you, Kobe. But before we get to that, as we bring Josh back in, I believe we have some breaking news, Mr. Birch, that you can bring us.
It's about the F1 testing. Yes, we've got we've got the questions coming in now as well, because we've managed to get the graphic with said timings, and I can now show you what I don't think anybody's seen the full results of these timings. So this is the results of yesterday's post-season test, and I doubt any of you would have seen it because these are usually kept very hush-hush. I had these sent to me. So Charles Leclerc was the fastest on a 1:23.510. He was driving the Ferrari. Carlos Sainz was driving the Williams, but he was running C5 tyre compounds and next year's model of them as well. So very fast time from him as well to be a 10th off, but he's taken that Williams to new heights, and they were testing some new developments as well for next season. George Russell focused on long runs in that day, though. He finished in third place on a 1:23.789. Nico Hülkenberg, of course, was running. He was in fourth on a 1:23.856. Then we had Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Now, he didn't run in the morning session because he was still ill, but he did run in the afternoon, and his running as well was mainly on the C4, C5 tyre. So he went up to fifth position on a 1:23.873, as I mentioned earlier. Amul Mawasa was racing in the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, as they're now known, but they've always been Racing Bulls. The RB just stood for that anyway. But yeah, he anyway was up in sixth position on 1:24.1. Pato O'Ward was driving the McLaren. He did a 1:24.222. Jack Doohan getting another run in the Alpine, of course. We now find out that it was part of his contract that he could do the final race in Abu Dhabi, and Alpine just really did want rid of Esteban Ocon quite quickly. Doohan's time was a 1:24.268. Paul Aron was driving in the other Alpine. He did a 1:24.275. Esteban Ocon got his first run out in the Haas, and he was in Haas overalls as well. He did a 1:24.305. Luke Browning was in the Williams. He did a 1:24.375 as well. Harry Acker as well was also running, I believe, in the I want to say Haas, because he was running in Mercedes earlier on in the day. Liam Lawson ran in 13th place as well in the RB, 1:24.440. Arthur Leclerc ran as well in the second Ferrari. So him and Charles, once again, were out there on the circuit. I know there were some photos taken. He did a 1:24.576. Isack Hadjar was out there in the other RB, 1:24.632. Landon Norris in the McLaren, 1:24.678. Tsunoda got the morning session as well, and the afternoon in Sergio Perez's RB in Red Bull. He did a 1:24.689. Gabriele Bortoleto in the Sauber, 1:24.738. Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, 1:24.838. Jack Crawford as well in the Williams, 1:24.997. Felipe Dragovic in the Aston Martin, 1:25.014. Frederick Vesti, 1:25.159. And Antonio Foucault, 1:25.238 as well, down at the bottom of the timing screens. Also, so that was your complete running order, separated by 1.7 seconds. We ran 8 hours and 45 minutes under green flag. We had a red flag test at the end of the day. And then after that, Charles Leclerc and George Russell stayed out on the circuit to complete some final bits of filming for the new F1 movie. Apex Racing went side by side with them on the track as well. So you can expect to see that in the coming weeks. But that is your results from the post-season test. And I can't believe we're still in 2024. And we're using a timing screen, basically, that's been around since 1994. But yeah, there you go. Back to you, Matt.
You just expected that to say Schumacher, Hill,
Yeah.
Coulthard, Herbert, Hakkinen on it. Hots and knots then from the weekend. Plenty to get our teeth into, although I've not seen any of it from Sao Paulo and Abu Dhabi. I have a hot, which is last weekend and this. Doesn't count for us because we weren't there. But if you were at Yas Marina at the weekend for the Grand Prix, you could get free entry this weekend to the Golf 12 Hours at Abu Dhabi. That's a very good incentive, isn't it, to get people to come back to the racetrack? Free entry for the endurance race, which is the final EPI round of the year this weekend, which I noticed in their press release and entry list guff that I was reading this afternoon. On their website. Oh, that's quite good. I like that. You can come back the week after and watch the GT cars. I thought that was quite a good hot. I think that's my only hot for the weekend.
Do you know, I bet some of the journalists have taken them up on that offer and stayed in an extra couple of days to watch the final race and they'll fly back.
I bet a lot of them are already on their way home.
Well, let's see. We've done 3 weeks running. And Rui Marquez certainly wants to go. In fact, the last message that was sent out, have I still got it? This was a hot for me. Yes. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. There's been highs and there's been lows, but we all made it. Safe travels home, everybody. And see you next year to do it all again. EMS, smiley face. I thought it was quite nice. Still can't work out who EMS is. Don't know who runs that, but I thought that was quite nice. That was nice and sweet. Right, hot for me. I don't know. It was quite a good race. If you ignored what was going on at the front, we mainly focused on the battle for 6th in the Constructors' Championship, so that was quite fun. We had a virtual safety car, but no actual safety car. Did we? No, I don't think we had a safety car. For Formula One, it was bog standard last weekend. Well, I think the worst bit for me was the TV direction. Like, we were watching Hamilton on that last lap, and then we've missed McLaren nearly winning the Constructors' Championship because they went to this helicopter shot and they picked up Piastri, and then they didn't pick up Norris. So it was really like, I was standing there going like, which one's that? And it's like, I'm trying to build up to a crescendo here. So that wasn't nice. I thought the hots mainly came from Formula E, and it's a bit, sideways me because we were able to broadcast Shakedown. So I really enjoyed that. So because they don't broadcast anywhere, Shakedown very much is a test session. And we could see Nikki, James Rossiter, Katie Munnings in the pit lane testing everything out. And then they showed the track action while they test out all their tracks. So I knew it was going to happen. I expected there to be commentary. There wasn't any. So I was on the phone with Omi and I said, Omi, start commentating. I'm going to do it too. And we talked for 20 minutes on a Shakedown session. And then we uploaded that and it's got quite nice. So nice to bring something unique. And I really enjoy having the media pass because we were able to stay on there longer and do the press conference and get a couple of questions in. And I thought the racing was a lot better. I said this on the Formula E bar a couple of nights ago. For me, the ability now, it's no longer peloton racing. It's close racing, but they're not lifting off and saving battery all the time. They're actually racing all the time. And that, I think, finally is good news. And the forward drive is fantastic. So I think Formula E got off to a great start. And I don't know if you've seen Verline, but whew, wow.
I've seen a still of Pascal on his head. Yes, not so good. Talking of people on their head, not so good. The whole Russell Verstappen thing is a huge knot. But
I can't tell who's
well
lying
done
and who's
George
not.
for actually coming out and saying it like it was. The funniest part of all of that was the Lando comment about the driver's dinner on the
they did that on
Thursday
purpose.
night or Friday night. Was yes, we all went to dinner, and yes, they did sit as far apart from each other as physically possible, which did bring a smile.
But do you know what? Do you know the story behind that as well? The fact that
There was
George
a seat next to Max and he moved up and sat next to Lewis or something.
Yeah.
It was
George was the last to arrive. Apparently, Max said, "Hi, George, come sit down." And George pulled the chair out. You know that really awkward scene? Where is it? Oh, I can't. Right, you know in Men in Black when Will Smith drags the table across and he makes a whole bunch of noise. That is exactly what George did. He pulled the chair along the back and sat next to
the table.
I was like, oh no, that's so awkward. But I don't know. I'm going to put your bleeping head in the wall. Sounds like a Max thing to say, but I don't know. Max always strikes me as a great guy off the track, but in terms of racing, he's just like his dad. Like he is like, a little bit too much, isn't he?
Yeah.
But
It's going to be interesting to see. But I feel like a lot of that was, we've been on the road for far too long, and we all just need to go home.
Cool heads, yeah.
Yeah. It'll all be fine and dandy again once everyone reconvenes in Barcelona, I want to say. For the first.
I think that is, yeah. I don't know where we're testing next year, actually.
Yeah. It's all over the place for the start of for next season. Another knot from the weekend was that it was Alex Jakes' final Formula 2 commentary. at the weekend.
Yeah,
Does that mean he's going to do what I think he might be? I thought I was alluding to a couple of weeks ago when we talked about him being on a Sky Sports advert, even though he doesn't work for Sky Sports. Perhaps, maybe, or is he just going to focus on F1 TV stuff?
Well, it's very interesting because he's been elusive and has said that he will be commentating on Formula One next year. And other sources are telling me he's also doing Formula One esports next year as their lead commentator.
Oh, okay.
And I can understand why he's given up Formula 2, because I knew at the start of the year he was battling a throat infection, much as I was actually. But he lost his voice and had to get it back. And the constant broadcasting really does take your toll on it. I'm very lucky as in that I've only lost it properly once a couple of years ago. That was after Le Mans, I want to say. It got really bad. I think Silverstone blew it as well because it was. So I think we went to Le Mans, then it was worse. Then we had Silverstone, and I blew it even more. That was that 22 race. By the time I go to Austria the next week, I sounded like this. So I can understand why he's wanted to, because effectively he's doing 30 Formula One races plus then 28 F2 races, and he's never getting any time. Qualifying, yeah, and practices, and he's never getting time inside the paddock to do his other jobs. So I find it that literally you come into the commentary box on Friday morning and you leave on Sunday and you feel absolutely deflated. You really do. You wake up in the morning and you sort of don't want to wake up because it's like, oh, I've got to be in the commentary box in 5 minutes. And it does get to you because you don't see the daylight. And don't forget, Alex doesn't go to all the races. So he's going into a very dark room in Biggin Hill.
Biggin Hill.
Yeah. And I can understand. And I understand also that there's things happening in his private life. So I'm not going to say that because that's his place to say. So, Matt, you might understand, Matt, if I give you the wink.
Right.
But yeah, so I can understand why he wants to be at home more, and I can understand why he wants to cut back on everything else and get ready for the Formula One season. Just focus on that. Whether or not he's doing Sky or not, that's been left very much up in the air. But I know Crofty's not doing as many races next year.
We shall see. Adam says the Leclerc brothers running together in FP1 was hot. Yeah, just nice. Talking of Ferrari, and he also says the season finale memories all together. Talking of Ferrari, the whole Leclerc science stuff. And he says thank you to Josh for his coverage over the season. The Leclerc science stuff at the weekend, excellent.
Yeah, that was lovely.
Lewis Hamilton stuff over the weekend. He's not going anywhere. He's just going to another team.
I know. I got really annoyed about that. It's like,
he might end up winning a fair few races next year.
Yes.
Again, if that car's just as good as it was over the last few races of this year. So
that annoyed me.
What's the saying? Don't be sad that it's over. Just be happy that it's happened. Well, it still hasn't finished.
I'll tell you what I'm angry about. Race director's notes. The top three can go to the grid as well as the driver of car 44 to do donuts. Why not the world champion?
Yeah.
That really annoyed me. Why are we saying, Lewis Hamilton, you can go to the grid and it's goodbye on your career as a Mercedes driver? Yes, it's been 30 years. Yes, he's won all his championships with Mercedes power engine, one with McLaren, 6 with Mercedes. But it's just moving team. He's not leaving Formula One. And it really annoyed me over the weekend with all that, because you've got Team LH going, oh, look at Mercedes. They can't wait to get rid of him. Oh, look at that. Bono, you're a cheat, you're a liar, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, shut up. You don't know what's going on. Everyone's like, oh, look, Bono's abandoned him. I was like, Bono can't go to Ferrari, because if Bono wanted to leave Mercedes, he'd be made to sit out for a year of gardening leave, and he's got a family to pay for and a life, and he's been offered a promotion and an opportunity to work with another driver to stay where he is. I would have stayed where I was. Bono hasn't, and he can't just follow Lewis around like a puppy. Bono's done what is best for him. Lewis has done what's best for him. I hate Team LH with a passion. I really do. And seeing all that rubbish over the weekend really annoyed me. And then seeing Sky treat him, like a gospel was really annoying to me. I much preferred what Channel 4 did. Channel 4 had Steve Jones, Billy Monger walking with Lewis towards the Mercedes goodbye party, giving a nice little sum up, a nice little speech. And, you know, for the first time, I actually sat there and I was watching it after everything. And I thought to myself, that's the first time I've seen Lewis Hamilton in a long, long time. Not this PR rubbish where, oh, I'm vegan, oh, I'm doing Project 44, oh, I'm leaving Mercedes, oh, I'm going to Ferrari, oh, retire the car, all this, woe me. That was the first time I saw the Lewis Hamilton that everybody went nuts for in 2007, 2008. The cool, calm, lovely guy that Lewis is. He looked a bit refreshed after that season. And I'm hoping that's the Lewis we get at Ferrari, the one we had originally in 2007, 2008, 2009. And I'm hoping we get that. But I couldn't stand the flogging a dead horse, or in this case, flogging a dead star. I don't know. It was a bit ridiculous.
Flogging a dead prancing horse.
Yeah, well, I can't say that because he's going to Ferrari.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I am so looking forward to next year to sort of give you a hot 2025 across all motorsport. Has the chance to be the greatest motorsport season ever. You've got MotoGP with so many world champions in key positions at different manufacturers as well, rallying up to be brilliant. You've got Formula One as well with the teams. We've got, you know, Red Bull is slow, McLaren are fast, Ferrari are fast, Mercedes are going to have a hot new lineup. We've got Williams on the up. You've got the battle in the mid-team still looking good. Alpine have jumped in form. Haas are jumping further. Sauber sort of waiting, but could still be a surprise on wet days in qualifying. And it's just so tasty. Touring cars, you know, we've got rid of the hybrid. We're getting synthetic fuels in. We've got more cars on the grid. They're bubbling up nicely as well. World Superbikes is going to be a bit more competitive because they've closed up again on Top Rack. WCR looks to be good in their second season. British Superbikes just came off one of their greatest season finales of all time. That looks good as well. It just looks so good. Formula E was great. I can't wait. I almost am sad that we're at the end of it because I know I need a break. I know you need a break. Everybody needs a break. But at the same time, I'm sort of like, can we go now? It's like, I just want to go like that and get in.
Me and Matthew Owen said an hour after the Phoenix Cup race finished for NASCAR. We're ready to go now. Can we go to Daytona and we'll start again? Because NASCAR's going to be great next year. IMSA will be good. WEC, you know, all these teams have had a year or plus now with the new cars. They're going to be really, really good. WRC's got the potential to be good. What can Toyota do in response to them losing the Drivers' Championship to Thierry Neuville? That's 5 weeks away. Monte Carlo.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
24 hours. So end of January. So Supercars is going to be good next year. We've got championships going to new places with new faces, which we always love at the beginning of the season, and we're already talking about it 2 weeks before Christmas, which is exciting. We haven't got anything on at the weekend, but the final grid tonight comes your way in this slot next week, the final grid tonight of the year. So any Sergio Perez news we will bring you, and perhaps we'll do our hots and knots of 24 to round out the grid tonight hots and knots segment for the season.
That would be fantastic. I can't wait for that. We're expecting Perez in the next week, aren't we, as well, for that to be announced before Christmas.
You would think if they didn't do anything, they'd do it before the factory shutdown.
Yeah.
Before the Christmas break.
Because it's 2 weeks.
Miles up the road from where I'm sat right now at Tilbrook, Milton Keynes. So, yes, we'll see if we get any adios Checo posts from the Red Bull F1 Twitter account.
You better be ready to, scoot down to that factory if he does go.
As soon as I hear the braking, I'll be down there.
Thank you, Matt. And everyone as well, we have got one more show to go this year, so please do continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for helping us reach 1,500 subscribers. We're well on the way to halfway to 2,000 now. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications when we go on the air, and follow all of our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. You can take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. You can join Colin, Mark, Michelle, Robin, David and Matthew, who invest each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join these fine folks who help us keep us on the air. And once we hit $500 per month, we can start sending our team to the track to cover more races and continue expanding our coverage. Link to all of that is in the video description. And if you want to make a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. And you can consider buying a specific on-air personality cup of coffee and they'll thank you on the air. I'll tell you what, guys, we need like a special outro for next week. Somebody should get a clip show ready and play that at the end, or like a video montage. Yeah. Should we all start singing like they do on BBC and F1 all those days? Or I'll tell you what. Well, yeah, we'll get Kobe to do a
fire up
shoey.
the My Chemical Romance, quick.
Oh, I love that one. That's the best one. Welcome to the Black Parade. You can summon an entire era with just one key. Fantastic. And everyone knows what it is. It's like when Anne Hathaway beat Kelly Clarkson to Since You've Been Gone. How the hell does she know that from 3 bangs? I can't do it. But anyway, we'll join you for next week for one last show as well. So for Kobe Lambeth and Matt White for the Grid Endurance Formula Index, I'm Joshua Birch from JB Motorsports. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time for the final show of the year. Good night.